Hey guys, I am Samura Jones, your emotional restoration coach, and welcome to the Shattered Whole podcast, where we talk and feel and heal through by acknowledging the hurt, claiming our healing, and living as a new creation. I am so super excited about today's episode. Today's episode, we have Nia Jackson on, and she is the Mindsetting Coach. So I won't let it delay any longer. We're going to jump right in. I do want you to take notes. I do want you to, so if you have a piece of paper, have it out and ready to go, or take notes in your phone, because I think that you're going to get amazing information that's going to really help you move to that next level. So welcome, Nia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So tell the people Nia Jackson's story. Like, who are you and what is mindsetting?
Okay, so Nia Jackson is the Mindsetting Coach, as you said. I specialize in teaching influential leaders how to identify the root cause of the issue that's holding them back from living out the fullness of God's purpose and plan in their life. And I get them to address the secret underachievement that they are holding close and that they are not addressing in their everyday life as they, function as very high-level people who are doing great things in the eyes of people who have mediocre expectations. And so I get them to, rise to the level that God is really calling them to.
Yeah.
And so my story was kind of similar to those people. I was doing the most, thinking that I was doing the most, but I was really just only exceeding at mediocre expectations. And so after living that way for years and years and years, I realized that there's more to me. There's more that I can do. And if I just keep living my life based on other people's expectations, I'm going to be really bored. I'm going to be very underwhelmed. And I was getting so overwhelmed at trying to keep up with people's mediocrity because I was just trying to live according to their standards instead of just doing what I should be doing and just focusing on that and allowing that to fulfill me. So it's a very underwhelming, cyclical kind of process. And so I spent years trying to, do as I was told and doing things the right way and, doing like any good 80s baby would do and just do what you're told and get the education and blah, blah, blah. And after doing all of that for years, I was like, this is it.
Right.
That's all y'all been doing out here.
Yeah.
And y'all want me to do this for another 50, 60 years?
50, 60 years.
I was like, oh no, I can't do that.
Because that was the statement that we were told. Listen, you go to school, go to college, get a job, make sure you get a 401k. If your job still does a pension, then wonderful and fantastic.
Yeah.
You have made it.
Yeah.
And especially in this day and age, that can be a very empty and lackluster existence.
Yeah.
I think there's a real appreciation to doing things that way if that is what you're called to do in that specific way.
Yeah.
But if there's more to you and you know that there is.
And I even really thought that I should, like, both my parents are entrepreneurs. And so they really told me at a young age, like, you don't, like, in a very judgy way, you don't want to have to work for anybody else. You want to be able to write your own ticket. You want to be able to control your own destiny. And I was like, cool, who doesn't want that? Like, that sounds great. And they would tell me, like, all you need to do is go to school, get an education, work for somebody else for a little bit period of time, learn the ropes, and then you can break out on your own. And I was like, great, that's the blueprint. Like, I can do what I'm told.
Do that.
Me following instructions has never been a problem. But they left out the fact that entrepreneurship is a journey of self-discovery in disguise. They left out the fact that if you don't have a good self-management process, that you're going to struggle. They left out the fact that there can be ceilings in entrepreneurship that are based on your own limiting beliefs. They left out the fact that there's a difference between being an entrepreneur who's AKA owning owning their own job and actually being a business owner who doesn't have to work in the work that
Yes,
they're doing.
the levels to
it. So they left out a lot.
Yeah.
So when I got out there trying to do it, I was frustrated.
Yeah.
I was high-key mad at them because it wasn't going the way that I expected. And I definitely wasn't getting the return on investment. So I had my own sort of period of time where I went through struggles and challenges, and that's why I ended up, seeking out God, because nothing else was working. And so in doing that, I ended up, getting the answers from him, getting what I needed, but buried within what I needed was what I wanted. I'm sorry, buried within what I wanted was what I actually needed.
Yeah.
And so in going through that whole process with God, that's how I ended up writing the Mindsetting Method, and that's how I ended up, sharing it with other people.
Yeah. Like, I love and I value that. And that's why I wanted to have her on this particular episode, where we're talking about accountability, but in the purview of his work versus my work. Right?
Yeah.
So there's layers of discovery that happened in you doing what society or parents designed for you to do, and you did it well, right?
Yeah.
But there were some nuances that was not discussed, talked about, and is not talked about, I think, often enough, which is, what is the mental and emotional capacity that's happening there? Let me not say capacity, right? Well, you deal with the capacity because you hit these limiting beliefs because of your capacity, of your understanding.
Yeah.
But then you are having these spaces where no one talks about what is happening to you, what you need to develop in you in order for you to hit these milestones, and your existence doesn't always fall into what is your job title.
Right.
What did you accomplish for the outward word to enjoy, or to fill up your bank account?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So so I want to talk about, like, dealing with the mindsetting method. Talk about how you even got to the place of birthing the mindsetting method.
Well, it definitely started with me being able to recognize that even though my parents had taught me a lot, even though they had given me every key that they had, every shortcut, every blueprint, they were still human, and and there's no blueprint for parenting, so they just tell you what they know, and that's all that they knew. So all the things that I rattled off that they never addressed, they didn't address it because they didn't know it. Like, they didn't have the answer to it.
Right.
And in hindsight, now I see that they, experienced challenges that I want to send them this, so I want to make sure they listen. But they experienced challenges that they didn't always address, and they didn't always get the answers to.
Correct.
So they didn't have it to give to me. So one of the first things I had to realize was that even though everybody is around me and is giving me wisdom and giving me guidance, they can only give what they have.
Correct.
They cannot give me what they never learned. They can't teach me what they didn't learn.
Exactly.
So it started with me recognizing that. And in recognizing that, I said, okay, cool. Love them. I'm glad that I got what I got, because what they did give me gave me enough understanding and confidence in my own abilities to be able to say, well, now I just need to go find the answer.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing I can't learn, because in all these spaces and places and experiences that I've had, I've learned a lot, and I've proven to myself that I can learn and, different things. So the next step was really seeking out options and solutions that would actually work.
Yeah.
And so in trying to do that, though, is where I got to the end of my own intellect and my own strength and my own understanding, because I was trying to do everything.
Yeah.
And when you go from being, a person who can do like school like very easily, even though you're in gifted and talented program, everything that you did was all AP. Like, we took the high school, like, I went to school in Louisiana. Everybody at my school took the state graduation exam in the second semester of our freshman year and the first semester of our sophomore year. And everybody passed. And they were just like, okay, moving on. So, like, I was in a space where I was like, I'm not stupid. So, so I should be able to figure this out, you know?
Right.
And it was good that I had that, enthusiasm to want to figure it out, but it was also just a really inflated ego as well, because I had never been challenged beyond my capabilities.
Right.
My capacity had never been tested. I had never, had to stretch myself until I was in my mid-20s when I was in law school.
Gotcha.
And that's too old to be hitting your first challenge.
Yeah.
Right? So in realizing that I couldn't do what I needed to do by myself and getting to the end of my intellect and my own understanding, I was like, okay, well, what else is there?
Yeah.
Because I don't like this life that I'm living. I'm not getting the results from the life that they want me to live. So what else should there be? And there was only one thing that I hadn't really tried, like, on my own, and that was trying God. Like, I needed to try Jesus, like, for real.
Yeah.
I'm not the type to throw hands, but I needed to try him for myself. And so that's what I did.
Yeah. And I think that statement is important because there is something about feeling like if I am accomplishing all of these things and I'm not able to still feel fulfilled, then what's wrong with me? Right? Instead of looking for the higher in the external or the note that God is trying to sing you, that what you need is him. The missing component is that you need God in order to take this next step, because doing it your way can give you worldly treasures, but that internal treasure that you're looking for in fulfillment mentally, emotionally, and even in the way that you were expressing yourself with your family is lacking because you don't have and you can't achieve this thing by yourself. So once you recognize that you needed God because you couldn't get full on your own, what steps did you start taking?
Well, first I started to go to church because it was only by going to church that I realized that I actually needed God and not church, that I needed God and not religion, that I needed that personal relationship with him, right? So then in doing that, I was like, well, let me just be open. For once in my life, let me not put any limits on this exchange, because I've already I've tried everything that I could think of. So I really need to be open, or else this is pointless.
Right.
So I was just honest with myself. Like, I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with, is that they find it really difficult to be honest with themselves. I don't know why. It's not like you even have to tell it to anybody else. Like, it can literally be your own little secret, but you just need to be honest with yourself. So I was just honest with myself to be able to say that I really needed some extra guidance, and that in order to do something that I had never seen done, that people in my family and my circle had never done, who else would you call on? Like we would much rather herald somebody on the internet and follow all these people and think that you could get that person's 7-figure, 8-figure glow up from an Instagram post than we would from actually building a relationship with the person who created you for a specific purpose and this time.
Correct.
Like, to me, intellectually, that doesn't make sense. Like, that's incongruent.
Right.
It's unreasonable expectations. It's borderline insane to think that you could get all of the riches and worldly things that these other people have gotten just by following them and emulating them.
Correct.
So I was like...
And it's empty and it doesn't last.
Right.
I used to tell my son when he was little, he would love pretending to imitate my nephew. Okay. And I would say, I was like, why are you behaving like that? Or why are you acting like that? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Because he's like, no, I'm just, and I go, you know what? I was like, I'm really sad today. And he was like, why are you sad? I was like, I really miss Dimitri. And I was like, I know you're acting like, my nephew. I know you're behaving like him. And I was like, but man, I was like, God did all of that to create you so that you can be you, because the world needed a you. Yep. And I said, but you're not showing up as you. And I was like, and now we're out here lacking. I was like, man, I can't wait, to Demetrius wants to be Dimitri. Yeah. And he was like, and it took him a couple of times, and now you can't get him to act like anybody else but himself. Right. I was like, but having that understanding of how important it is to be the authenticity of yourself. Yeah. And then, and I like what you said, having the personal internal talk with yourself and saying the truth.
Yeah.
Like that acknowledging the hurt part, comes into layers. Like on one aspect, you're acknowledging pain that occurred.
Yeah.
But you're also acknowledging, why don't you want to be honest with yourself?
Right.
You know, like, why are you scared of being honest? What do you think you're going to discover? And do you feel like you can't handle it?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when you hear people on podcasts or whatever talking about being honest with themselves, unconsciously equate talking about it with the actual process of being honest with yourself. They don't have to go hand in hand. Because I've healed enough to be willing to share it, because of my direct personal relationship with God, I know that I need to share it in order to help other people get free. But that's not the case for everybody that's listening to this. Like,
Right.
That doesn't mean so that you need to actually tell somebody. So when I say be honest with yourself so that you can therefore be honest with God, it doesn't actually have to be a verbal dialogue. And a lot of people, I think, totally misconstrue that. Like,
Yeah.
You can be honest with yourself and then be honest with God, and nobody ever know except in how they receive you. Like, let that speak for itself. Let how you show up in this world, let how your work speaks differently, let the impact that you're leaving on the world speak volumes.
Right.
You don't actually have to tell anybody what you were honest with yourself about
Right.
and what you took to God. You know, like, that can literally be your secret.
Right.
And so I think people who get caught up in thinking that you have to tell somebody how you were honest with yourself in order to actually be healed. I think a lot of people that are out here that you may have listened to are being honest and public with their honesty because they're being called to do that.
Right.
But they are not the same thing.
Yeah. Called or looking for attention depends on who you listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
I was thinking that when I said it.
I know you was. And that's why I said it.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then knowing the difference, right? I go, because if I am being transparent about what it is that I am experiencing and what I'm going through, but with the purpose of giving you a person to connect to so that you know that you're not the only one who's experiencing that, and that, hey, we can develop and go through this together. And as I discover, you discover, or I have already discovered and I want to show you what I discovered, and accept. Or instead of, I want to show you what it is, I want to expose this wound that I'm going through, to one, re-traumatize you, one, give you no hope, or two, to get you your sympathy, because I need that to feed the work that I'm not willing to do on myself.
Because there's a lot of people out here doing it that way. And the way that you can know if you should really be listening to this person is if they're talking about something that's present tense. Like, if the wound is still healing, if the wound ain't fresh, if it's a wound and not a scar, then you probably should be listening to that person, because the whole process isn't over.
Yes.
Like, the wound needs to actually have healed. So if somebody's really in a present day kind of moment, then you probably should press pause and come back to that later.
Yeah.
You know, you should see how this ages.
Yeah.
You know?
See, I love that. See how it ages, because the perspective changes, right? Like, if I know that your wound is open and gaping, I may be support for you so that you know that, okay, I see you hurting and going through this. I'm not going to take advice from you as to what actions I should then take because of what it is that you're experiencing. Because how many times have you gone through an experience, and part way through the experience as you're healing, you thought you had it, and then later on you were like, didn't have it, didn't work out like I should. I had to do a whole about face, or I had to cancel that whole way of thinking and kind of do things this way. There's always this shifting that's happening, or things that are changing in these processes. So I don't necessarily want to take advice from you, but I may just be a support system for you. And so, are you my coach, or am I your support? Like, which one am I?
Right. And there's definitely a difference. And I think it's funny, so, like you said, when sometimes you think you have it, and then you realize you didn't have it. But then there's another layer when you realize that God had you all the time.
Yeah.
And if you don't go through all of those iterations, then you're missing out on understanding, you're missing out on revelation, you're missing out on how to adjust going forward.
Yeah.
So a lot of people go through a lot of things, and they think that they're healed because the process is over and it doesn't make them cry. Like if they had to talk about it right now. And it's like, but if you don't know how to prevent yourself from getting in that same situation again,
it's coming back.
You haven't actually healed and you haven't learned.
Yeah.
And because you haven't learned, you can't ever heal. Like the wound is about to be cut open again the next time that thing comes back around. So healing is definitely multi-layered. It takes a long period of time. And so you have to be knowledgeable and careful with who you're listening to and what stage of the process that person has gone through when you're listening to it. So
yeah. Like don't be afraid to vet the person who wants to pour into you, right? Like your vessel is more fragile than you think.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, and anytime you are consistently putting, even if you're just trickling in a little bit of poisonous content, if you will, eventually it will start to have effects on your body, mentally, physically, things that you were strong in one area. So you'll start to have those doubtful conversations in places that you were once confident, or you'll start to believe other people's opinions of you in some cases that you've never even met. You don't even know these folks. And I was like, and they have such a strong influence because you've allowed them to just trickle into knowing when to scroll. You need to teach your algorithm how to algorithm.
Right. I mean, that's why I encourage a lot of my clients, people that I work with, to do a social media fast. And to not even just, like, social media fast is the bare minimum. But the next layer is to really just wipe the slate clean. And so there was a period of time where I remember going around at work. Well, I don't follow people at work, but like at church and just my friend circle or whatever. And I would tell people, I unfollowed everybody. It's not personal. I unfollowed everybody. And I would I only followed, like, obviously I had my page, my business page, my Pastor Tyrone Stevenson, and like Bishop T.D. Jakes. And like, that was it. Right? Because I was like, let me tell this algorithm what I really want to see. Like, if it ain't about me, my business, or Jesus be Christ, I don't want to see nothing.
Nothing Christ. Come on here.
I don't want to see anything else. And so I unfollowed everybody, and then the algorithm changed.
Yeah.
And then I slowly, after maybe like 9 months of like not having anything else in my feed, then I started to add other things in. And it was a totally different space.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to be, if you really actually want to heal, you have to be intentionally active in the process. And you have to make sure that you have boundaries up so that you don't trip yourself.
Right.
Because social media isn't these people getting on your nerves and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's you opening the door and being mad when people run up in your house.
Oh.
That's what social media is. And so you look like Boo Boo the Fool, mad in your own house when you invited everybody over.
Sure did. Sure did.
So the healing process, you really got to help yourself.
Yeah. So and I love that because that's a my work thing, right? My work is I get to dictate the atmospheres that I am placing myself in.
Yep.
Right. So I can't say, you know what, I really want to heal from going to the strip club. Like, I don't know. It's like I have a thing about it, and I'm, like, I just need to heal from it. But I ask you where you're going, and you're like, oh, I'm going to the strip club. What do you mean? But I thought you said you were trying to heal from the strip club. Well, while I'm there, I'm going to really pray about it. I'm going to...
Said no one ever.
Because Susie she's expecting me to, and I don't want to disappoint her. You know what I mean? And my question to you is, but if the atmosphere that you're in is causing detrimental damage to your heart, to your mind, and it is literally impeding on the life that you want,
right?
I don't think you should go to a strip club. I think you should. I'm using ridiculous, but you know what I mean? I'm like, examples, but I'm like, it's the same ridiculousness. If you're going to, I don't want to deal with this person anymore. Right. This person has been terrible for my mind, the way that they speak to me, they don't respect me, and I'm not talking to them anymore. But you are following them on social media. You have created a brand new page to make sure that you can see what they're doing, and they don't know that they can see what you're doing. And I was like, and you're putting in this toxicity, into your mind, and you're just like, did I do my work? Yeah. For the prayer that I had? Right. Did I do my work for for all that I can do. You spoke earlier and you said, I realized that this was my limit of what I could do, and that I then needed God to fill in the blank. But the question becomes, am I even doing my work?
Well, I definitely think that is a valid question. But even before you can answer that question, a lot of people forget the purpose behind the prayer that they actually pray. And they lose sight of the purpose of the prayer, right? The true purpose, not the I'm so mad at them, I don't like this person, why they doing this, da 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 da, not them.
Yeah.
Me. Like, what are you bringing to the prayers that you are praying? And what is the purpose that you're trying to seek and have changed in your life for these prayers, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to really keep that at top of your mind when you're thinking about the work that you need to do. Because if you lose sight of the purpose of your prayer, then the work is going to be skewed. And it really is. Or your understanding of what work actually needs to be done is going to be totally skewed. Because you're going to find yourself thinking that the work is that I need to convince this person on how they need to change. Or I need to teach this person how they need to talk to me. And I need to make them do life or whatever differently. Whereas you could be adjusting how you show up in this world. You could be removing yourself from certain environments. You could be better at setting your boundaries and being vocal about them before people cross them. You could be doing a whole lot of different things if you focus on yourself. And that's easier to do when you remember the purpose of your prayer. And so a lot of times people think purpose is like a surface sort of thing, and it's real easy to make it all about them because they are the instigators of the problem, or they are the way that the problem is represented in your life, but they are not the actual problem. It's the difference between you two, or the friction between you two, or something that is multiple variables that is creating this problem. It's like combustion and stuff in science. You got to have more than one ingredient in order for there to actually be combustion. Like the idea of spontaneous combustion is low-key a miracle when it comes to science, because it doesn't just happen. So, problems are the same way. Like there have to be multiple variables and multiple inputs that come together, and then they don't blend well. And that's what creates the problem. And you are part of every single situation that you're in. So if you think that, so if you think that all these other people or things or situations or environments are the problem, you're playing yourself, because you're in every problem that you have. So you've contributed to it. You've ushered it into your house. You thought you could trust it, but you didn't know how to make it leave even after you figured out you couldn't trust it. Like all of that is contingent on you. So when it comes to doing your work, you have to take all that into consideration. And so a lot of people, when you're out here in this space and you're trying to be really quick and you're trying to move really fast, you end up having this surface level awareness, and you address things on a very surface level way. And that's what makes the work seem to never work.
Y'all see why I have on? Okay. So I love all the things. I like that. First of all, I need to take accountability, because the onus is on me. I'm the common denominator in these multitude of situations that I'm dealing with. And I need to do my work so I can find out how I'm contributing to all of those different factors, right? And so I love that, because it gives an answer to that repeat of that same issue that keeps coming around, and you're not understanding why it keeps coming back. And it's because you haven't taken accountability for your portion of the work that needs to happen. There are going to be some things that are outside of your control. You're not going to be able to explain everything, but what you can deal with, and what you can just get an observation of, do that work, and you'll probably find out that you owe somebody an apology. Right? Like you probably find out that you need to maybe have grace for outside people, and then maybe even have a little bit more grace for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you start to have a lot of discovery in that place when you're taking accountability for the inner work that you need to do.
Yeah.
And you'll probably have the most peace that you've ever had.
Yeah.
When you start to deal with the common denominator of you.
Yeah, and I think another thing I would say is necessary to really start to do your work and go through the healing process, in addition to remembering the purpose behind your prayer, in addition to taking accountability for your role in everything. Mm-hmm. The next thing I would say that's super important is recognizing and identifying the root issue. Not dealing with the surface issues. Like, we've talked about this a lot of times. Like, the surface issue, the way it shows up in your life, is not the actual problem. The stress you're experiencing is not the problem. It is how the problem shows up. It is what the problem causes. The problem causes stress. The problem causes anxiety. The problem causes depression. The problem causes overwhelm.
All these symptoms.
It causes all of those symptoms. And those symptoms are what the problem looks like on the surface. Mm-hmm. But if you don't dive deep enough to actually get to the root of the problem, you're never going to get rid of it. It's like any plant. Like, if you chop it off at the surface, if you give it a little time, it'll grow. So meanwhile, you're over here, you're mad that this problem keeps coming back around. And it's like, but you didn't actually kill the problem. You just cut off the leaves.
Right. Not dealing with that root.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, like, in my head, like, even in dealing with my own problem, I was like, okay, so if I try to handle this in my own strength, I'm just cutting off the leaves.
Right.
Because I really don't know what I'm doing. Because I've never been here before. Mm-hmm. I've never tried to become $1 million earner in 1 year or one period of time or whatever. Like, yeah, my parents are entrepreneurs and they will earn, 6 figures in a year. But ain't nobody in my family ever made a few $100,000 off of coaching on the internet. So, like, for God to be calling me to coach people and to give them the insight that he poured into me, and to be doing it and to want to do it at the high level that would get me these levels of earnings, it's like, how am I supposed to do that on my own when I've never seen it?
Right.
So I had to be able to understand, okay, this is the problem. These are the things that I think are holding me back from achieving the level of impact that I know God is calling me to. Mm-hmm. So instead of just saying, God, why don't you do more? God, why don't you make magic happen? Mm-hmm. God, why don't you
come on, genie,
somehow,
in a bottle.
yeah, like, exactly. Yeah. Like, why don't you somehow show up and make this happen? If, why don't you give me these these wealth and riches for me doing what you told me to do, as opposed to saying, oh, God, change me. Oh, God, fix me. Oh, God, grow me into the steward that can actually handle all the things that I want. Once I started asking that question, he was like, okay, bet. So this is the process that you need to go through to identify the root cause of the issues that you have.
Yeah.
And so when you dive deeper into the root, and part of that is realizing your role in it. But once you get down to that root, you can actually address the root of the issue. Yeah. And that will prevent it from coming back around and around and around again.
Makes sense. And then in that, you mentioned you went into God's work. Mm-hmm. Like, so how were you able to identify what was God's work versus what was yours?
I never really looked at it that way. I looked at it from the perspective of, like, for me, when God talks to me and I come back to him with questions, he talks to me like the Nene Leakes meme, and he says, I said what I said. That's what he tells me.
Yes. All right, cool. So, I don't feel alone. All right, cool.
So he just tells me, I said what I said. So I've digested that over the numerous times that he's told me. I've digested that to mean that what he says is my work is my work. Yeah. If he didn't say it's my work, it ain't my work.
Got it.
And therefore, it's his work. Like, he's in control of that. Right. So I don't feel the need to figure out the separation of powers, because he's giving me the instruction. So this is not so even though I am in a partnership with him, it's not an equal partnership.
No.
At all.
And thank God.
You know,
Jesus.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So we're not on the same level here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He's, Daddy Warbucks. He is the silent investor. He came in at the A level, you know what I'm saying? Of the IPO and all of that, angel investors and all of that kind of stuff. So he knows this industry. He knows me.
Yeah.
He knows what I should be doing.
Yeah.
So when he tells me to do something, it's in my best interest to actually just focus on what he's told me to do.
Yeah. And can we be honest? It is plenty of work.
Right.
It is and that's why we try to figure out what God's work is or check in on him as if
we on the same level.
We on the same level. And I'm like, well, God, you didn't do this yet, or you have not finished the first thing.
Right.
That I told you to do.
Right.
And the reason why I can't give you this daughter, the reason why I can't give you this son, is because there is something that will develop in you in this area of process.
Right.
So if you do what I've instructed you to do, then you can go to the next. I had said earlier, I was like, it's really important, not earlier in this podcast, I've said it on my Instagram, follow me. I've said it, I was like, there are times where the staircase is blurry.
Yes.
There are moments and times where you just cannot see the top of that staircase, but what you can see is the step.
Right.
That you're on.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't even see the next step in front of you because there's work for you to do on the step that you're on.
Exactly.
So don't worry about, well, what's the top of the staircase going to look like? I want it to look like this, and I want it to be like this, and I want it to... You don't know what you need that top of the staircase to look like? You don't have a clue. Because wherever you are, you're dreaming from your level of experience, and God has so much more for you that is tailored just for you.
Yeah.
So if you consumed yourself with your work, which is plenty.
Yeah.
Look, it's plenty. Then you will find that what you have prayed for will begin to develop. And guess what? You won't be overwhelmed by it. You'll be able to sustain the space that you've prayed to go into. Or you'll find out what you've been praying for, you don't even want that thing anymore.
Right.
You don't even want that thing.
What I think a lot of... Because I don't know if I said this, but the people that I specialize in working with, right, like they're super high achievers. Like they are multi-hyphenate, multi-talented, capable of all kinds of things. And they have a lot of things that they could be doing with their lives. And so if you're one of those people, I want to make sure that I just hammer this point home that when we're talking about the staircase, I think a lot of these people actually get distracted. And they're not even worried about the stairs on their staircase. They're worried about the stairs over there because they just saw you trip. And so when they see you trip, they want to tell you how to walk up your staircase. They want to get off their staircase and come over and help you travel your journey. When, again, that ain't none of your business.
Mind your business.
So the next lesson that I had to learn was, okay, God gave me my instructions.
Yeah.
He told me what I need to be doing. And therefore... this is on me, so everything else is on him. But I had to also realize that the other things that I'm capable of doing are also not my current business. Like literally and figuratively. Like so many people are just like, oh, why don't you, like you're a lawyer, why don't you just start your own law firm? That ain't it. That's not what I'm called to do. Just because I can't do
it doesn't mean that I should be doing it.
Exactly. And so that goes for how you operate in your career, how you operate when it comes to helping other people. Like I have so many clients that really struggle with being the strong friend and that person for lots of people.
Yeah.
And one of the first questions that I always ask them is, how many of those people are adults? The overwhelming majority is always adults.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, of the 5, 10, 15% that are children, how many of them are over 14? And the overwhelming majority of them will be over 14. They'd be like, well, why do you say 14? I said, a 14-year-old can make themselves a pot of rice and heat up some beans, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, after you season the meat, put it in the oven for 350 and, like, you know, take it out in an hour and it'll be done. You know what I'm saying? So, like, they're very self-sufficient. So I think a lot of people really convince themselves that part of their work is doing other people's work. And part of their work is doing things that they're capable of doing it. Well, I should just do it because it's easy for me. That still ain't it.
Right.
And if you're trying to actually accelerate your life to live out God's calling, to, fulfill the purpose that you were created for, you're going to create far more sources of friction by trying to do all the things, by trying to show up in other people's spaces, by trying to do everything for everybody and be that strong person. You're never going to leave the impact that you really want to leave.
Right.
If you're spread. And, it's like light. It's like a laser. I always tell people, like, lasers are lights, right? And we have lights around us every single day. But light that is spread out and diffused is soft. It's palatable. You can look at it for a long period of time and nothing will happen. But when you condense all that light into one space, you have a laser that will cut through skin, that will cut through metal.
Correct.
It's the same thing.
Correct.
So our energy can't be diffused all over the place if we want to have major impact. And part of your work, that's the reason why putting it all together. You got to dig down deep. You got to get to the root of the issue so you can get rid of what's holding you back, so that the work that you do can actually be focused and concentrated, so you can have that intended impact.
Yeah. I like it. That was a mouthful.
It was.
That was a mouthful. But I think that it was a realization.
Yeah.
That we needed to take in and adapt and to sit with.
Yeah.
There are going to be times that, especially on this podcast, that you're going to hear conversations that you're not going to get an instant gratification, that it's going to have to kind of mold around in your mind. It's going to, you're going to have to revisit it, and you're going to have experiences and conversations that come up that then spark a memory that you received within listening to this podcast. And then you're going to go, I believe that you're going to make a different decision. I believe that you're going to recognize that, this is an opportunity for me to do my internal work that they were talking about. And I really do want something different.
Yes.
I really do want something different. Like, I'm tired of praying for something that I'm not even a part of the manifestation of.
Yes.
So I know, and I'm going to hold myself accountable for my work.
Yes.
Because God's work is too big for me to even understand. But he took the time out to give me some direction.
Right.
And you may say, well, I don't really have a relationship with God and I don't really talk to God. So how do I do that? You can start a relationship with God from anywhere.
Anywhere.
You don't need to find somebody. You can ask God a question from where you sit, from where you stand right now, and be like, I know I don't talk to you and I don't really know much about you, but I recognize that I need something more than myself. And I would love to start this conversation, this relationship, and see how I can get out of this stuck place.
Yeah.
Get out of this place where my mindset is not producing, not just in things, but in my joy.
Right. I think it's so interesting that you say it that way, because the phrase that you actually use is one that I kind of struggle with. Like, and people say it a lot. My mindset is not producing X. My mindset is not giving me what I want. My mindset is not doing this thing. And that is because I believe that mindset is not a verb. Mindset is a noun. Mindset is a thing that people possess. It's a thing that we try to make do things that it's not intended to do. And so when one of the revelations that got me really excited to do this work that God was calling me to do, that I didn't really want to do, if I'm honest,
Say that.
was when I was reading Colossians 3:2. And it says, set your mind on things above and not things of the earth. Yes. And so the few times that I had heard it in church or whatever, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, be holy and not worldly. Like, that's what I got, right? Because I was like, on things above and not things of the earth. But this time around, I was reading it, and I couldn't get past the beginning of the sentence.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, set your mind?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, first of all, I have a choice on where I put my mind.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, did nobody say that in church?
Right.
Like, ain't nobody focusing on that. They focusing on be holy, not worldly. And I was like, okay, so if I have a choice on where to set my mind, that's why God is commanding me to set my mind on things above.
Yes.
And then I was thinking, oh, so setting my mind is a thing that I do.
Yes.
Wielding a mindset, growth mindset, financial mindset, strategy mindset, blah, blah, blah. That's just stuff you hold and possess. It's inanimate objects. Because I was out here and I was like, so if you have a growth mindset, can I have it at the same time? Can we be holding the same thing? Is there enough to go around? Is it a zero-sum game? Like, how does this mindset possession thing work? Right. And so that's the reason why I always say that I'm the mindsetting coach, because I'm encouraging people to wield mindset principles, traditional principles, in a biblically aligned way. And that's what mindsetting is. And it's really taking control and taking action and putting action to your beliefs, your faith, and making sure that you're doing it in a way that aligns with the Word of God. So when you said, my mindset isn't doing, and I'm like, mindsets don't do. Mindsets are just things. They're just like, it's a concept.
Yeah.
But if you don't put any action to the concept, nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Well, we got some work to do.
Yeah.
But I'm just so grateful that we were able to have this conversation. Yeah. Make sure that you listen to this over and over again. Like I said, it's that's why I told you, listen, make sure you got your notepads when you're around here, okay? Make sure that you have your things in place, like you can listen to this on the train, you can listen to this in your car, but then get yourself in the corner somewhere and be like, all right, now I'm gonna listen for real.
Yeah.
Because it's going to penetrate in layers.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that.
I'm excited too.
Because that's growth opportunities.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for being amazing, for being wonderful audience. First of all, I want to make sure that you have all the information for Nia, because you need to stay connected. Like, you need to stay connected to me, because we're here. Because we're here. I was like, but you need to stay connected to Nia. So can you tell them, like, how can they find you? Like, all the things.
All the things. So you can find me on Instagram at Miss Nia Jackson. That's MS and then NIAJCKSON. And then on Facebook, I'm at the Mindsetting Method with Nia Jackson. And then also my website, startmindsetting.com.
Find her. Invest. Hire her. All the things.
All the things.
So thank you guys so much for coming. And remember that I am listening, that I see you, and that I love you. And God bless.